And a very good morning to you. Welcome along this Monday morning. And what a Monday morning it is. It's bang smack in the middle of the World Cup. We've had the opening round of group games. Nearly all of the contenders, apart from Belgium, have actually played for us. Notice I didn't mention England as an actual proper contender there, because they've already won the World Cup, according to the BBC. We'll play that for you in a little while. Owen,
good morning.
How are you?
Very well. How are you?
I'm knackered. I'm nearly a broken man after all this. I'm like... Can't watch anymore.
10 matches is what I watched the weekend. Not all.
Did you miss any?
No, I didn't miss a single one. But some of them were concurrent, so I didn't get a full kind of breakdown of just how bad France were on Saturday morning, because I was kind of glued to what was happening in Melbourne. Similarly, I couldn't get a full appreciation for the madness that was occurring between Germany and Mexico yesterday, because the hurling was on at the same time. It was the hurling, wasn't it, or was it the football? I can't remember. But anyway, there was some sort of concurrent matches, whereas you just had like an open field to kind of appreciate the crapness of the Croatia jersey and the beauty of the Nigeria jersey, for example, on Saturday night. And you had all the time in the world to just look at Neymar trying to run rings around Switzerland and fail miserably, because
mad overreaction to Neymar. Like a lot of hate for Neymar after that performance. Hate.
I don't get it. I don't get the overreaction. He had a poor game. He was stifled in a way that you would have expected Switzerland to stifle him. But I think when you say the hate there, it's because of, his fancy new hairstyle and, the massive ego that was on show yesterday. Neymar needs an ego to play well. He needs to feel that he is the centre of his own universe to play well. He needs to feel like every game is a World Cup final, to get up for it, to hype himself up. That's what he needs, and he tried to do that yesterday, but it just didn't work out for him, and I think that's where a lot of the hatred stems from.
He's taken all the free kicks, I think, as well. The fact that he's not very good at them compared to, say, Coutinho or somebody else in the team who might be able to actually score from the range, that he's like, I'm going to chip this in and see what happens.
Yeah, and there's no argument really about it when it comes to Brazil. It's just kind of like Neymar shouting at the team, like, give me the ball.
You were saying that you think that there's a good chance Spain are going to win it because they're the most impressive team you've seen. But if 2 or 3 of those chances that Brazil have, which ordinarily go in, then suddenly they've won that game quite convincingly. And actually they seem to be a team who have all the talent and could improve and maybe get the right team out.
Yeah, like if Brazil had won last night, the narrative certainly would have been Brazil won and they didn't even get the best out of Neymar. Imagine when Neymar comes good in this tournament. That's what the narrative would have been. Whereas with Spain, it was like, this was an unbelievable performance, and they still drew 3-3. It was one of the finest individual performances we've seen so far from Isco, who was absolutely sensational. Andres Iniesta looked absolutely amazing as well. Sergio Ramos, one of the great centre-back performances we've seen, but he was still contributory towards a 3-goal concession, which was... so there's plenty of black marks when it comes to Spain, despite the fact that I think there's no question that they were the most impressive team we've seen.
The only thing that united Twitter all weekend was the fact that the Mexican wave in the middle of the Spain-Portugal game was an absolute abomination. One of the low marks of humanity ever since, one of the animals first climbed out of the swamp. Was there an actual Mexican wave during the Mexico game? When they were 1-0 up, when the one time might be allowed. You're allowed. Go. We salute you, Mexican fans. You've made it all the way to Russia.
Well, I'm not sure they would have. They would have had to completely camp out in the entire stadium, and I don't think the German fans would have been in the humour to continue a Mexican wave all the way around the stadium. I think they were fairly grumpy yesterday, although that's me being very stereotypical. I'm sure the Germans took that result in their stride yesterday, like the good fun nature of their nation.
They're being compared to England now. Rafa Honigstein has tweeted this morning, it's like, you realise things have got very bad when you're being compared to England. I don't think Germany are done just yet either, by the way. That game was fixed, though. The Mexican game was completely fixed because pre-match they had a Mexican granny on their side. Have a look. Here she is. This is in the middle of the Mexican anthem. Every single one gets played. 4.5 million views on Twitter. It's like... That's also a big TV. Have you got your big TV yet?
I have actually, yeah. It's massive.
What's it like?
It's 55 inches of World Cup
pictures.
beauty.
Why have I not seen any pictures?
It's going to start today. Just going to do when I'm actually...
Hashtag Spawn.
Exactly, hashtag Spawn. Very good content to come up very shortly. But basically what I took from that video is that the reason why Germany didn't play any fullbacks yesterday was because of the Mexican granny.
Yeah.
It's like they kind of felt the Lord of Light above them, and they were like, cannot go back into defensive position. Mesut Ozil suddenly doesn't know what his feet are doing, and it's like, why am I moving back to right back? And it's like the Lord of Light just moving him back to that position.
So I didn't get the whole... So Ozil was pictured with Erdogan the Turkish Prime Minister over
Yeah, and
the
Gundogan
weekend?
as
Over the last week?
last week or the week before. It's a while ago at this point. It was before their last warm-up game.
And so who cares?
Well, they care because they got booed and by their own fans after what happened, after taking that picture with Erdogan. And
he's about to get beaten anyway. So it's like, okay, not been very good for international relations. Not a very, forward and progressive individual. But like, so these two clowns want to have their picture taken with him.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter about the whole political situation. It matters that they got booed, and it's clearly had a very significant impact on them.
Those two players.
Yeah, you could argue that it's had a significant impact on them, or you could argue that Mesut Ozil was just being Mesut Ozil in the first half yesterday.
I mean, he tended to play better for Germany, right? And he's tended to be a bit more useful.
And he was better in the second half yesterday, as most of Germany were when they created a few more chances, when they started to, not play Mesut Ozil at right back. And lo and behold, things started to pick up for them in the second half. So it wasn't all doom and gloom. And I do agree with you that this thing isn't done for Germany just yet. Yeah. It was the fact that they got beaten. Whereas with Brazil, to a certain extent, with Spain, it was at least, you don't get beaten in your first game. You're off to a decent enough footing.
Who else in their group?
Mexico's group is Serbia, Costa Rica.
Oh yeah, okay, it's not easy.
Well, the Serbs showed themselves to be as gritty as we expected them to be yesterday, and they kind of dominated the game against Costa Rica. Kolarov with an absolute wonder goal. It was sensational.
A lot of good goals.
Yeah, and like that Serbia team, they've improved even since we played them. Milinkovic-Savic has been an unbelievable addition. His bicycle kick, which wasn't offside but was called offside at the time, despite the fact that it was saved. So the officials got off the hook big time on that one, which would have put Serbia 1-0 up in that game.
It was saved.
It was saved, but he was onside.
All right.
And it was called as offside. But
anyway, we're going to show the Roy Keane video now. We do this? Yeah, so this is the other one. So Slaven Bilic, before he became manager, I would have said he was a cold-eyed, hard-nosed killer. And then he became the manager of West Ham. It was actually he was a jovial enough character for somebody who looked like a killer. But he's on the ITV panel. I'm not watching that much ITV. I've got to go to the extra channels to get it. It's a bit of a pain. Yeah,
it's been RT or BBC for me all the way. Slaven Bilic kind of looks like an assassin who doesn't even have a sniper.
Yeah.
It's like, I'll do it with my cold bare hands.
And then he comes up beside Roy Keane and you realise, well, actually, my money's on Roy Keane in that fight. Have a look.
When they're all over the place, like Nigeria is, to be fair, it's not bad to have...
Don't touch me.
Roy Keane. Even Slaven Bilic didn't make him laugh though. Was it last night when Slaven Bilic was being accused of being biased, and Bilic was like, to be honest, I don't really care.
This is about the penalty.
Yeah, or
in the Brazil game.
Yeah, he was asked something along the lines of, would you not be like fighting your own cause if you were one or the other? And he was like, just kind of completely dismissive of the presenter, saying, I really couldn't care less, which really kind of enamored himself to Roy Keane. Roy Keane smiled and beamed and almost laughed, which was a really big achievement from Slaven Bilic.
That was one of the highlights. One of the lowlights, Patrice Evra being a bit of a dick. Have a look at this. Oh, 1 sec, it's coming out. So Patrice Evra, I've kind of given away what happens here. So patronise. One of the other things that happened was Maradona. There's obviously a clip of Maradona going around the internet. I don't know if you've seen that, where he's like rubbing his nose a lot. It's like, he must have a cold, or maybe it's hay fever, or who knows. And
it's hay fever.
Somebody's helpfully added a little somebody shoveling gif on it. But Maradona, racist storm, racially abusing some fans, and you're just always in the best line I ever heard about Maradona was great footballer, shit human.
Yeah.
From a taxi driver in Naples one time. It was like,
it's a very accurate way of describing him. It's straight it's just bizarre when you look at some of the stories around that South Korean team and the whole Spygate that's been doing the rounds with Sweden and the South Korean
Swedes. Swedes. Who knew?
Who would have thought it? But also the South Korean manager. Like when I saw these quotes about the South Korean players saying when they wore different numbers at a training session because you wouldn't be able to tell the difference, which is one of the most racist things you could say, was actually said by the South Korean manager or somebody involved in the camp. It was like, wow, okay, I didn't expect those quotes to come from that source. And then you got Diego Maradona here.
Well, so the quotes were that Westerners find it difficult.
Yeah.
To that was, it was like playing on the racial stereotypes, and hopefully.
It's probably not as bad as what Diego Maradona did, to be quite honest.
Well,
that's kind of, there's a lack of subtlety about what Maradona did.
Yeah.
A certain lack of subtlety.
A lack of subtlety too about Patrice Evra, who seems to be a bit freaked out by the fact that women know something about football.
Here in Costa Rica. And they're 5 unbeaten in the World Cup, so I think they're a strong defensive team. My only concern with Costa Rica is that they don't score a lot of goals. Joel Campbell, who was their star striker in the 2014 World Cup, didn't score a lot of goals, isn't playing today. Urena hasn't had a good season in the MLS, so they don't score a lot of goals, and they're playing against a team in Serbia who do score a lot of goals.
That's a perfect link, thank you, Annie, to talk about the goal-scoring prowess. Oh, he's good, isn't it? She's good. Of Serbia in Aleksandar Mitrovic, who fortunately for Serbia.
Right. What's coming up on the show today? We're going to be in Russia twice. We're going to talk to John Duggan. We're going to talk to Kevin Kilbane. John has been like Forrest Gump so far, been pretty much at all of the best moments that there have been in the World Cup so far. Kev definitely been in his hotel room a good bit.
Yeah.
What games has he been at?
He was at Denmark-Peru. He was on CoCom for the BBC on Saturday night. Just
1-0 Denmark.
That was the most heartbreaking game of the tournament so far.
Because that's where we should have been. Is that what you mean?
No, because the Peruvians kind of encaptured us all in their glow of beautiful football and passion and real poetry, really, when it comes to football. You think, like, especially with everything that happened with Antoine Griezmann and Julian Lopetegui over the last 7 days, you're like, football's lost its soul. And then suddenly Peru step up and Mexico step up, and you're like, football has not lost its soul. Football is absolutely amazing.
Mexico, good green jerseys as well.
Yeah, well, the jersey game has been very, very strong.
There's a lot that we could learn. Like Nigeria jersey, that was the second Nigeria jersey, right? So like they also have a green jersey. Is their main jersey like white and green starburst kind of thing?
Absolutely, yeah, exactly. That is yet to be rolled out.
I was thinking we should just have that's our second green jersey. It's like very like your first one's like, yeah, so what? What are you going to do about it?
As in copy the Nigeria jersey?
That's our second jersey, yeah.
Yeah, okay, why not? Let's just do it.
Looks exactly the same as your first jersey. Yeah, no, it doesn't. It looks a bit different. Screw you.
We're probably not going to play Nigeria too many times over the next few years anyway, so we can get away with it. There's going to be no direct clash.
Yeah.
May as well just do it. May as well just make the Nigeria jersey the plain template for every single World International jersey. You just change the colours on it.
We'd sell loads.
Well, if you could actually find a template to actually base it on right now, because they're all sold out everywhere.
Joe saying Germany away as well. What was that for yesterday?
I'm not sure. Was it the green one? I presume. Yeah. You're referring to. They weren't wearing that yesterday.
They were white, weren't they? Yeah. But it would be another good Irish one to rip off. Of course, that was the urban myth, wasn't it? That they play in green because we played them in a friendly after the Second World War. Complete bollocks.
Is it?
Complete bollocks.
I hadn't even heard that urban myth.
Yeah. No, it's like Socrates playing for UCD or Bowes or whoever it was.
That didn't happen either, no? No, really, yeah. That's news to me. I've been woken up with a cold splash of water this morning. Socrates did not play for Bowes.
Okay, so we're also talk Gaelic football. Michael Meehan is going to join us a little bit later on. He previewed the game for us on Friday. Pretty accurate in his assessment of what was likely to happen. Ultimately, it's going to look in the history books like it was a routine victory for Galway, anything but pretty much level heading into stoppage time at the end of normal time in that one. So a 4-point win in the end for Galway. Garbage time points is how Kevin McStay talked about it in the aftermath of the game. So as I said, we'll preview that a little bit later. But now it's time for the newspapers.
OTB AM.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.
Okay, so we are going to start with the Irish Independent this morning. Title can't mask Tribes, Jekyll and Hyde. So this is the fact that they weren't very good in the first half, but also the fact that the game was in the Hyde. So there you go. They had the Jekyll and Hyde headline ready to go, and they weren't going to blow it just because Galway came good in the second half.
Yeah, I thought they were referring to Dr. Jekyll Park there for a while.
Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, you're right, sorry. Big guns failed to fire. Germany and Brazil left licking their wounds. Brazil aren't licking their wounds. Brazil are like, okay, slow start. We'll roar into this, don't worry about it.
Like Switzerland are ranked 6th in the world, and Neymar wasn't good. 1-1 isn't bad.
Are they 6th in the world?
Yeah, they are.
Why?
Because they've got a very functional way of getting results in important games.
Right.
And maybe they do that thing that Wales did where they doped their rankings by not playing a single friendly match.
How did they do in the Euros?
How did they do in the Euros? We had this, like, we didn't even remember one of the Euro semi-finals last week when we were having this conversation. So how did Switzerland get on? Did they get dumped out by a Hungary or something in the group stages? I'm pretty sure they had a fairly desperate Euros, from what I recall.
I do Euro 2014 Switzerland, and they give me a conversion of...
Well, considering there was no Euros in 2014, the fact that you managed to get a result for that is impressive in itself. It should just flash up on Google, what the hell are you doing?
Albania...
Oh, that was a good group with Albania.
They went out on penalties to Poland.
Ah, yes, and then Poland got knocked out by Portugal in the following round.
All right, so...
Not great.
Not like, you know, but...
Not
you got,
sixth in the world good.
did Portugal hammer Poland?
I'm trying to remember. It wasn't. It wasn't.
Okay,
this
is great. We'll anyway. So they were in the Euros, but there's no way they should be top six. McGrath rethink Waterford boss may yet stay on after last year. That's not actually going to happen. It looks like the Examiner have a tiny little box inside the paper today saying that he told the team last night in the dressing room that he was going. So we'll get clarity on that, I'd say, as the day progresses. But most of the newspapers generally think that McGrath is staying on, except the Examiner, who have like one line, and later on in the paper they have a McGrath is. Not staying on, sorry, but that he was not going to make his announcement for a little while. Tony Ward, the most complete performance of the season, lays the pathway to Japan. We will talk with Alan Quinlan live from, I think he might still be in Melbourne, or at least on his way to Sydney, where the final test, the deciding test in the 3-test series, is going to be held. Hurdle cleared, Banner blitz Limerick to set up Munster final with Cork. So they've got in-depth coverage of the Munster Hurling Championship, obviously, as you'd expect. Great stuff in that as well. Good piece from Brian Gavin in there today with a very interesting line about, you know, we've been talking about the umpires and how the umpires are basically teamed up with the referees, but the referee picks them, so they're his mates, as opposed to being inter-county referees. And a big play was made at the time of the umpiring issues around the Waterford game in particular, of the fact that training is offered to umpires, and he says the question has to be asked, what are the GAA doing to improve umpires? I know for a fact they haven't been brought in as a group this year. You might even have to go back as far as 2016 for the last time they were summoned to Croke Park. The last time any umpires were given guidance was for last year's All-Ireland semi-finals, when the referees in question had their assistants briefed by the refereeing authorities. Not enough training for umpires is being done because it isn't available. Nobody is doing video analysis with them. It's not a case of getting on these fellas' backs, because every weekend they're giving up to 10 hours, 8 to 10 hours of their day, which is fair enough. They're genuine GAA people and everybody says that. And what can a linesman or an umpire actually tell a referee? There are mixed messages about whether they have the power to recommend to a referee that they should award a free. There is just too much of a grey area. This is Brian Gavin, who has refereed All-Ireland finals. He doesn't know what the power of the linesman and the umpires is.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, something is seriously wrong.
Something is seriously wrong, but also just, I know this is kind of taking this conversation a little bit away from umpires, but if you look at the pause that you had in that game yesterday between Clare and Limerick before the double red card, that pause is kind of the antithesis to what people would say is the reason why you would have video refereeing in GAA. And
to slow down.
Exactly. That took forever and you don't get an accurate answer. Why not just have somebody who's literally watching it from a box in Croke Park and is just saying to the ref, listen, this is what happened, make the decision now. And if you want to consult the umpires as well, you can consult the umpires. If you want to have a screen on the side of the pitch, like they have in the World Cup or like they have in the NBA or like they have in the NFL, go ahead and do it. Go ahead and take a look at it, because it's going to slow the whole thing down anyway. You've got two umpires who've been given no training, who quite often haven't really seen it, but you've got to stand there and you've got to make a decision there and then. And we've seen disastrous calls being made down through the years. Yesterday, the David Reedy sending off was an absolute disgrace of a call from the refereeing point of view. And I just don't see what is, like, why there would be no reason to bring this thing in, bar the kind of disposal of a few extra resources. Why not bring in video refereeing at the very top level?
Like, it makes perfect sense. But the fact that one of our most prominent inter-county referees doesn't know whether or not he's actually allowed to take, that's a recommendation for free. It's like, are you allowed to tell me that's free?
That's bizarre, isn't it? Like, you would like to think that you are allowed to take the recommendations because referees have been doing it for as long as I can remember. But the fact that he doesn't know if that's actually a directive that you're allowed to kind of take part in or not is very, very strange.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, so here, McGrath will need more time to consider the role. That's the back of the Times Ireland edition. Big guns misfire in the openers. Germany beaten. Brazil joined Spain and Argentina in dropping points. I mean, that was the kind of most interesting part about this, really. It was like those four teams, only France with the proper big guns have actually won, and they were not impressive.
No.
In their 2-1 victory required. Was that penalty dodgy, or was it a good penalty?
No, that was good. Like, who was on? Mark Lawrenson was on co-commentary for the BBC and lost his shit over like the VAR. It was almost as if he knew it was going to go to VAR because he was like, great tackle, brilliant tackle, the best tackle I've ever seen in the world. You'll never see a better tackle than that. And I was like, oh no, he's not going to ruin this by looking at the screen, which will give him more accurate, up-to-date information so that he can be 100% sure in his decision, is he? And lo and behold, it wasn't a great tackle. Sure, he got some of the ball, but he also got more of the man. It was a stonewall penalty, and VAR has improved football to no end. I don't see how any of the detractors can stand by their initial opinion that VAR hasn't made football better. It's absolutely improved things, and sure, you can kind of use the stick to beat it with it. It's not perfect yet and it needs tweaking. Of course it does, but that doesn't mean it shouldn't have been brought in. But yeah, back to your original point, it was a penalty, it was scored. And
that was the Mexican grandmother again.
Well, there you go. She's having kind of weird effects in the studio now as well this morning.
Any other weekend, we would be like spending a good 20 minutes on any other Monday. England stuck with expensive Jones. Eddie Jones. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. Very aggressive line of questioning there, isn't it? Well, Eddie, you're notoriously one of the most aggressive people in world rugby, and you can't take it up yet. So, tough luck, Eddie. It seems like he's on borrowed time as England head coach at the moment. The RFU are laying a bunch of people off, and it would cost them £1 million apparently to sack him at the moment. But the conversation is about him getting sacked. He's lost 5 in a row. You would expect them to be able to perhaps turn it around against the Springboks next week and arrest the slump. But if he doesn't, it's a long time before the November series. No doubt they have a gimme in their schedule along the way. So they'll arrest that at some point. But you look at South Africa and see how quickly it's possible for a good coach to turn things around by picking the best available players.
What was it about Eddie Jones that made him so sensationally good last year? Was it fear? Was it novelty?
All the good work Stuart Lancaster had done?
Potentially.
Who knows?
Or is this a blip and a blip only? And it does seem that there's something far deeper rooted. There's an arrogance about this England team which isn't warranted at the moment. When Youngs walked off from the Sky Sports interview on Saturday, it was comically arrogant. It was David Brent arrogant. It was absolutely hilarious, and I'm delighted it happened because the mask has slipped well and truly to the point where the mask isn't going to fit back on to Eddie Jones or to this England team.
They're laying off a lot of people in the RFU at the moment. That's why they have those financial issues. But you would expect them to have pulled the trigger. The last time somebody lost 6 games in a row was Andy Robinson. Straight away, got the bullet. Right, so the Irish Times sports section, delusional optimism for England curdles to fatalism, is the headline over Ken Early's piece. Sophistication undone by passion. Germany 0, Mexico 1. Ireland prepared for one last push as they eye the prize. That's the Ireland tour to Australia. Jerry Thornley in Sydney talking about that one. Done the Examiner for you. And the Racing Post. Lovely Lawrence, Burke ace in classic swoop. John Dance hailed Lawrence as a superstar after his brilliant filly, trained by Carl Burke, dug deep to fight off all challengers under PJ McDonald to win the Prix de Diane at Chantilly yesterday. And then Fiesta time, because it is Fiesta football.
On the back of the Herald this morning, it's Love saying, "We won't panic. Holders Germany and favourites Brazil struggle." Also, Kane's able for World Cup stage, and it's Tunisia versus England this evening. It kicks off at 7 o'clock Irish time. Joy of Mex, holders hit by Lozano's low blow. Nay joy for Brazil, and Tribes 8 ball there on the football, and Clare to review. Reedy red, as they should. That's Shane Stapleton's story there, that David Reedy's red card is looking to be overturned by the Clare camp. They should have him back for the Munster final because that was a disgraceful decision yesterday. On the back of the Sun, it is Swiss blank account. Neymar kept quiet as Swiss shock him, and like a chat out of hell, halftime team talk sparks Galway blitz. Tab of the morning to you indeed. On the back page of the Irish Daily Mail, it's Tribes stand. Galway fight back after Walsh's rally cry fires up the troops. And agony for the big boys. It's Brazil 1, Switzerland 1, and Germany 0, Mexico 1 in the 2018 World Cup. On the back page of the Mirror, it is Kevin and Hell. Walsh says the Tribe inspired by the 2017 flop. That's Roscommon 2-6, Galway 16 points at Dr. Hyde Park there yesterday. And then a couple of the UK titles. The back page of The Guardian is New Look England. Southgate preaches boldness and flair as Tunisia test looms. You've also got Lozano there celebrating with his teammate as Mexico beat Germany 1-0. And then finally, the front page rather of the Daily Telegraph sports section is Harry Kane saying, "This is my time. Captain targets World Cup triumph, golden boot and a hat-trick, just like Ronaldo."
OTB AM is brought to you this morning with Screwfix, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products. Now, John Duggan was lucky enough to be at Mexico against Germany. He's up next, but first, he did manage to make a new friend after the game.
The game was good, was difficult. Germany was pressure all the time, but we know that we had the possibility, we believe in that, and we made the goal, and we won.
Best day of your life as a fan?
I have very good days in my life, but this is one of the best.
Were you confident you were going to win?
We believe that we can win. We know that we are not the favorite team, but we can win.
Herrera was great.
The game was great. We can believe that we win.
I have many good days in my life, but this was one of the best. John, the music is playing. Sure. Come on in.
The party's still on, lads.
How's it going?
The party's still going on here in Red Square. Hope all's well.
Yeah, all is great. You are like Forrest Gump, literally eyewitness to some historic moments.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. And last week we're in Manish Naya Square. This actually is Red Square, and behind me you'll see St. Basil's Cathedral, which was completed in 1561. So pretty historic world site behind me in Red Square at the capital of the World Cup, effectively, Moscow. And yesterday was just an incredible occasion, and the unpredictability of sport takes a new turn. And Mexico were full value for their win. They were hungrier, they fought for it. Their fans were incredible, a 12th man. And Hervin Lozano scored that winning goal. And interesting thing about Hervin Lozano, he's nicknamed Chucky after that horror film Child's Play, because when he was young at the academy, he used to scare people by jumping from under the bed and scaring lads. So that's Hervin Lozano's story. But when Carlos Osorio got them into the World Cup with 3 games to spare, he's got a 66% record. And Germany were flat. I don't know if they were complacent, but they were definitely flat yesterday. When Lozano scored, beer just flew everywhere. People were throwing beer cans and beer glasses into the air. Well, obviously the plastic glasses, like it was hats at Cheltenham. It was just bizarre. So it's just like the smell of beer. And it wasn't in a kind of a negative way. It was just some pure joy of celebration. The fans, I've been very lucky enough to be at a Champions League final and an Olympic final, but the atmosphere yesterday would definitely rival it and match it. The Mexican fans were absolutely fantastic, and probably their biggest win since they qualified for the quarterfinals of their own World Cup back in 1986.
It's strange when you know that a moment is iconic just as it happens, and say Ronaldo's free kick on Friday and Lozano's goal yesterday, both of those moments are right up there. We know we're going to be seeing Lozano's face for years and years and years to come in those epic World Cup montages.
Yeah, and he had the form coming into it. He's 22 years of age. He's playing for PSV. He scored 18 times for them. So he had good form coming into the tournament. He's got the fearlessness of youth. But Mexico played. Javier Hernandez did not play as well. They lacked a lot of composure in the final third. But all you need is one goal. They got it, and they were excellent on the break and breaking at pace. I thought Hector Herrera in the middle of the park was fantastic. Magisterial. Outplayed Kroos and Khedira to me. And Germany, Kroos forced a save from Ochoa to go onto the bar in the first half. But they didn't have that cutting edge. When the likes of Schweinsteiger and Lam retire, you wonder what that leaves in terms of leadership and dominance. And maybe those friendly results, often we don't look into friendlies very often, but maybe the friendly results did matter. And just in terms of I remember with Trapattoni, we didn't have a good run into the Euro 2012 campaign, and maybe Germany's kind of ordinary run into the World Cup 2018 campaign was illustrated yesterday. Timo Werner, I was looking at Diego Costa on Friday, and that first goal was just a fantastic goal, and just the brute strength and the finishing. And when I compared him in my own mind to Timo Werner yesterday, I didn't see the comparison, and I don't see that Germany have a world-class striker to complement, obviously, the great passing and midfield talent they have. But it was the hunger, it was the passion, it was the spirit of Mexico. It was almost like the Republic of Ireland performance from years gone by.
I presume the Germans had travelled in great numbers and were there and were making their presence felt, and yet it was obviously the Mexicans who were the ones who were kind of setting the tone.
Drowned out, lads. There were lots of them. They were occupying one section of the stand, but drowned out from the get-go, from the beginning of the game. And Mexicans were just fantastic. And a lot of Brazilians there as well, maybe because of 4 years ago, in unison with the Mexicans. And just the lads to my left there was lads just going crazy for the whole 90 minutes. I don't know where they get the energy from. Obviously, they're just high in the World Cup, but they were just going absolutely mad. Lots of masks. They have this thing with the wrestling masks, the Mexican fans. I think it's Lucha Libre, the kind of freestyle wrestling they're into over there. So lots of kind of colour. I ended up in a kind of a huddle, because you're trying to get some social snaps outside the stadium after the game, and I ended up in a kind of a huddle with a mariachi band. So just the most bizarre meld of excitement, joy, and people just high in life after the biggest win, arguably, in their country's history, definitely away from home.
Yeah, as they should be. Okay, so that was yesterday. The day before, you saw Leo Messi miss a penalty for Argentina in their game against Iceland, and the thunderclap, and like another phenomenal World Cup moment, really.
Yeah, it was a fantastic atmosphere. The Spartak Stadium, which after the Russia-Saudi Arabia game, I thought that was an exhibition compared to the Argentina-Iceland game. And then the stakes were raised even further yesterday with Germany-Mexico. But brilliant atmosphere. Argentina dominated the ball, 78% possession. And they were too reliant on Messi. Messi was trying to give the ball to Messi to do everything. He had 11 shots on goal, didn't score. One weakness in his game has been penalties, because from 12 yards out, he can't be as deceptive as he is with his amazing feet at club level. But he's missed over 20 penalties for Barcelona at club level. Of course, missed that penalty in 2016 in the Copa America final against Chile when he skied over the bar. This time, he sent it to Hannes Halldorsson's right, and the keeper parried it away. And I was watching Messi intently after the match. I was watching him before and after the game, and he didn't seem to be happy. He didn't seem to be enjoying it. He wasn't laughing. He wasn't joking. He was just pure serious. And when the final whistle went, he just ripped off the armband. He didn't throw it away, but that utter sense of frustration. People were coming around him. He didn't want to know. And he's carrying a burden, lads. He's carrying a significant burden. He knows he's 31 years of age now. He knows this is his best last chance of a World Cup triumph. And I wonder, is he thinking to himself, you know what? Maybe the lads around me aren't good enough to carry us to a World Cup. Angel Di Maria was invisible. They are shaky defensively. Willy Caballero hasn't played that much football at club level. Was flapping a bit defensively. I'd worry about them. Given Iceland were very well organised. Like Iceland are a decent team, but they're not world beaters. And Argentina now are going to Nizhny Novgorod for the Thursday match against Croatia, knowing that Croatia got their tails up. They won against Nigeria, and Argentina have a battle in their hands to keep themselves well in the hunt atop the group.
How great is the sense from what you've seen from the Argentina side of things after that game for wholesale change, in the sense that they need to get Paulo Dybala into that starting team alongside Lionel Messi? Of course, they both start in the exact same position, so that's what I mean by kind of fairly big changes to the side, potentially playing Dybala out wide, which in essence wouldn't make that much of a difference, given, as you'd outlined there, Angel Di Maria was pretty invisible.
Yeah, and Pavon and Banega, when they came on, were good. So I definitely see changes. Maradona, who was in the stadium wearing these most amazing red kind of fluorescent shades, wearing 2 watches and smoking a cigar, has come out and called the game plan employed by Jorge Sampaoli as a disgrace. That doesn't help matters. I definitely think we can see Dybala. Higuain came on late, so I definitely think we can see changes in the team. Aguero obviously will play. He scored the goal. He was sharp. It was an excellent goal that he took. So he will definitely play with Messi. But I worry more so, lads, about what's behind them. I worry about Mascherano. Maybe he's the light of other days, and I'd worry about the fact that Marcos Rojo hasn't played that much football. And I just thought they were shaky at the back at times, and that would concern me. Maybe not, as I said, for the group stages, but for later on in the competition. I think the best team I've seen so far, lads, have been Spain. Spain and Brazil last night. Brazil were good last night. Spain were good. Despite the Ronaldo masterclass, Spain were good on Friday.
Yeah, Spain are going to win the World Cup. There's no question about it. Not that it's like putting my neck out there.
No question about it. It's a bit early for that now.
Yeah, no. It's never too early to say no question about it.
Owen piled in when it was 3-2 to Spain. He was like, "Yeah, that's it. I'm cashing my chips in and rolling it into the middle and putting it all on Spain, 5-1." I'm not sure. I think that Brazil. Still, like, if they'd scored a couple of those chances last night, they were creating chances. There was good movement. There's strength. There's a bit of working out to do exactly what their best 11 is and how much responsibility Neymar's going to have. But I wonder, we were talking about this earlier, is this the World Cup where we actually finally see a team break out and win a World Cup that hasn't won it before? An outsider team. We still haven't seen Belgium just yet, for example. Belgium, maybe.
Yeah, Belgium. Belgium are, I suppose, the one team that we haven't seen that would be in that top echelon of contenders. I would agree with you. Brazil were my tip, but they're still my tip to win the World Cup. I think Brazil and Spain, I suppose what I'm saying is that Brazil and Spain have followed, even though neither of them won, they followed the path that we thought they would take in terms of their performances. Germany didn't. France didn't. England, I don't think were in that top echelon. Argentina did not. So you're looking at issues with certain teams that we thought were top contenders. Belgium now will come out tonight, play Panama and probably win. So yeah, in terms of a breakout, but I would agree with you. I think that, Uruguay could after slipping past Egypt, could be a team that could go far. Mexico, we've seen. And what's very interesting, lads, is now we could have a Brazil-Germany last 16 match. If Brazil top their group and if Germany finish second in their group, they're going to be the last 16, which has an knock-on effect for England, because it could mean that the second-place team in England's group, England-Belgium group, might miss them altogether ahead of the semi-finals. So that's what I'm seeing in terms of the draw. But just an incredible few days in terms of excitement, unpredictability, and it's like you have all these circuses, the most amazing circuses in the world, just sprouting up out of nowhere. The party goes on for a few hours, and then they roll up the tents and they go somewhere else. It's just it's very much the way I kind of feel about the World Cup, lads, is when you know that Snapchat thing where you open your mouth and a rainbow comes out. That's what I think the World Cup is like to me. That's how I'm feeling at the moment, So I even got a trip into Moscow Shamrock's GA Club yesterday morning as well. So
We're going to play that for you on tomorrow's show. So Russia's only GA Club, is that right?
Yes, that's right. So they're doing their best for the diaspora, and it's just great to see even new nationalities learning the basics of Gaelic football, and I just thought it was fantastic to see. There's an Irish bar here, Katie O'Shea's, which I was in last night watching the Brazil game, and it's just great to see that meld of cultures. And one thing that would interest me, lads, is that how are the Russian people going to react to this? And that, the Metro yesterday was they've got this song. I don't know what the song is, the Mexican song, but they constantly have the same song, a bit like the Boys in Green, that they constantly keep singing. And just there was policemen taking photos with sombreros, and you people on the Metro getting involved, the Russian people. And I just think from an openness point of view, this could be a real game changer in terms of Russian society, in terms of opening their eyes to what's going on around the world when everybody's coming to them, probably for the first time ever. I mean, America didn't come to the 1980 Olympic Games, and I think this will be a good cultural legacy for Russia. Yeah, it's a bit of a pity America didn't actually qualify just for that reason alone. Your next game is Poland and Senegal. What else have you got planned for this week? What I want to do, obviously, watch England this evening. It's interesting that he seems to have picked the team already. He seems to be doing quite a good, assured job, Southgate. I mean, he's definitely got the message right. Now, whether the football will follow has to be wait and seen. What I'm going to do tomorrow night, lads, is I'm going to watch Russia against Egypt with the locals and see how they get on tomorrow night. I think the match is in St. Petersburg, but I'll watch that here locally. Then it's Poland against, as you say, Senegal tomorrow, and then on Wednesday it's Portugal against Morocco. So that's the next few days plan. But this is like you're in the ring with Mike Tyson at the World Cup. You're getting punched in a good way every day, and you just have to pick yourself up and find where the next bout is. Well, listen, best of luck, John. Thanks a million. Thanks for joining us. Cheers, Jared. Thanks, Owen. It's John Duggan out there in Moscow having a great time. Yeah, that Poland-Senegal game is actually a great one to get tomorrow. That is the hipsters' dream, that group. The group G or H, whatever. Who's in that group? Poland, Senegal, Colombia and Japan. Oh, yeah. It's just call it at your peril kind of thing, except for the fact that Japan are definitely going to finish last without question in that. So Colombia and Poland should be the best teams, right? Well, let's not forget when Sadio Mane and co with Senegal, who are a very attractive team by all accounts. It's just the beauty of this of every World Cup is just the melding of factions that you will have never seen before. Poland versus Senegal is peak World Cup. Yeah, it is just. At what point will you ever be able to say, remember that time when Senegalese and Polish cultures clashed on the pitch in such a way that threw up X or Y? Who knows what it will throw up? It's kind of like Morocco versus Iran on Friday. Well, yeah. Just beaming from ear to ear, watching Brian Kerr almost explode in the commentary booth because it was such awful football at times. See that one clown attacked Brian Kerr on Twitter and got beaten down? Correctly beaten down. The mob attacked him. The fact that he had enough oxygen for a mob to even form to attack him was the worst thing about that. Doesn't take that much on Twitter anymore. No, not really. RT helpfully retweeted it. Well, in a very in the kind of way that Arsenal did to that Daily Mail reporter before, being very polite to him. It's like, well, we think Brian Kerr is good, and we've just retweeted it to our 70,000 followers. Yeah. Attack, hands, attack. Kevin Kilbane, good morning to you.
Good morning, lads. How you keeping?
Oh, you're looking fresh and well. You've had a shower this time.
No, I've not had a shower yet. I've been up maybe 20 minutes today rather than the 5 minutes of the day. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. Good night last night.
Yeah, no, quite nice. I got back in. I flew in from Saransk yesterday, so I was at that Peru game on Saturday. So I flew back in yesterday, back into Moscow, and then I just I watched this bit of the Germany-Mexico game, and then I watched Brazil later on when I got back. So it was all good.
Have you been having a wander around? I'm interested to kind of know what level of culture / tourism you're actually getting the opportunity to see, and what the hell Russia's like.
Yeah, I got out in Saransk. Saransk was a bit of a strange place, I thought. It was as if there was no one lived in the town. It's got a small population, to be fair, but very, very quiet. No one really seemed to be out and about. Didn't really seem to be embracing the World Cup at all. In the fan village, obviously the fan zone thing, what FIFA put up there in Saransk, there was nobody in it. It was Peru fans were there when they arrived, but other than that, there was no real buzz about the town at all.
Yeah. What's Moscow like?
Moscow's been good, yeah. I'm enjoying it. I'm going to get back out today again. It doesn't feel any edge to the place anyway. It doesn't feel like there's any real edge. I can get out, you can wander about freely, no problems at all. Been getting out on the metro system as well, so it's all good. It doesn't seem to me like there's any sort of problems. Now we'll see when all the fans are starting to get in, if there's going to be any sort of trouble knocking about here and there. But it seems to me that they've locked down it all. Doesn't seem any problems at all.
Were you quietly chuffed at the weekend to see that a team that we held our own against for 20 minutes at the Aviva Stadium last year got their first win in the World Cup, or was it kind of like a revenge mission that you were cheering on Peru all the way on Saturday night?
Well, they're not a good side, Owen, are they, Denmark? We know that, and I thought they were strong, they were sound defensively, and they just saw that game through really. But it does leave you with that bit of disappointment, knowing full well that we should have been there. I mean, if the Irish supporters would have been there with the Peru fans, there would have been some laugh at. There's only about 600 or 700 Danish fans that have bought tickets for the games here, so they've not really embraced it. Apparently, there's a bit of fear within the Dane supporters that they feel as though there's going to be trouble when they're going round. So that is why they've not turned up in the numbers over here. So it does leave you with a little bit of disappointment when you're at that game, most definitely, yeah.
What was your view of Peru in terms of how they can turn this thing around? Because they were obviously the better side on Saturday night. It was just a kind of rudimentary approach from a European team, once again beating the poetry of a South American team.
Yeah, they were the better side, weren't they? They created all the chances, all the opportunities. I was quite surprised that Paulo Guerrero, who was the one player who we would probably know, he's played a lot of his football in Europe, he didn't start the game, and as soon as he came on with about 20 minutes to go, the game changed for them. They almost had a focal point in the side. They could have a real link-up man, and they had that real trust in him as well. So I think he'll probably start the next game. Have they got enough to get out? I don't know. It's when you lose that first game like that, Denmark now, they probably play for a point in the next couple of games, and you're more or less going to go through on 4 points. Peru have to do something dramatic, but the way that they play, they'll play in the same sort of style. They'll send bodies forward. They'll probably create their own downfalls, as well as they did for that Denmark goal when both fullbacks bombed forward. They left themselves a bit exposed defensively, and that's what will probably happen again, I would imagine. But if they do get the chances, they need to maybe put them away this time, because when they missed that penalty, that almost killed the game from Peru's point of view just before half time.
Pardon my ignorance, is it France-Denmark next, or do they play in the last game?
It is Denmark. France. Peru in the next game.
Okay, yeah.
Peru. They've got Peru in the second game. Yeah.
So Denmark could actually be through already by the time Peru get the chance.
That's the thing. That's the thing where you're up against it, and you're chasing it, and then Australia. I probably fancy them to beat Australia, and it's what they have to do now. They've got to go for it, really.
Yeah.
What was your view of what happened there at halftime with the fellow who missed the penalty for Peru being surrounded by his teammates? Like you were saying in commentary, all right, that it wasn't the correct thing to do, but did the players really have a choice given just how distraught he was?
Maybe just get off the pitch, though, Owen. That's what I was thinking, maybe. And it was almost in tears, wasn't he? You can feel with the Peru fans when they've turned up here, they've put in so much pressure on that first game. Most of the fans I was talking to, even from Denmark, even some of the Denmark media team as well, saying we have to win this game. This is what it's about. So Peru and Denmark both felt they had to win that game. He's missed that pen. He's built up to something. Was it 30-odd years, 36 years since they've been at a World Cup? It all come down to him, Christian Cueva, taking that penalty. I mean, he's a class player. And when he's missed it, he wasn't at his best in the second half. He had good spells in the first half. And personally, I would have look, just get down the tunnel, get into the dressing room, get all settled. You can obviously give him your wishes then at half time. So I just felt they maybe highlighted something, and I don't feel as though he's at his best in that second half as well in the match. But it's understandable. Lads want to get round him, they want to try and support him. But I would have preferred it to be done if it was me who'd missed the penalty, and of course I don't have a history of missing penalties in a World Cup. I would have preferred to get down the tunnel. That's what I would have done.
Is that what you did, or did you go out and like wave goodbye to all the fans? In retrospect,
I wanted to get down the tunnel. I think there was I remember when it was kind of. Everyone's coming up to you, everyone's hugging you, but you're just distraught. You just want to get off, and I don't know. That's the way that I felt.
Luckily, a load of you had missed penalties, so it was okay, right?
Well, if anyone's seen it back, it's probably the worst penalty shootout in World Cup history. That's all. Anyone needs to watch that one back. It was awful.
Yeah, Ian Hart missed one in normal time as well. What about England? Obviously, the team leaked 2 days ago, and it seems to have been the right team, and Southgate has confirmed that everybody could have guessed the team anyway. I'm actually genuinely excited. I'm looking forward to this game tonight. I really want to see how they're going to do. I think Tunisia are probably going to frustrate them, and this could easily be one of those famous nil-alls that have bedeviled England in recent years. And that actually, look, I don't know. I think they're going to have a reasonable tournament, and I'm not going to write them off if they do. But also, I wouldn't be putting your money or mine on England to win tonight.
No, I wouldn't be. I wouldn't be backing them tonight. Most definitely. I think Tunisia will probably sit in. I think they'll make it so difficult. I think tactically the way you're going to set up in this game is all out of all the 6-8 top teams, England will be the only side that's going to be playing with 3 at the back. So let's see how tactically England are going to be within this one as well. Let's see how they're going to go against the side that's going to sit in deep against them.
Kenny, not impressed with Kyle Walker as a defender, right? And was like, I definitely wouldn't have him in there. But actually, as part of back 3, when Kyle Walker's best traits are to be an attacker and to add to the attack, does that maybe counterbalance the fact that you are playing with 3 at the back and that you've got somebody whose natural instinct is to bomb forward?
Yeah, well, I think in this game you can actually change your system, change personnel, and play in different ways. I think that back 3, if they stay fit, if they stay without suspensions, that will be his back 3. I think that's going to play the tournament. Kyle Walker, personally, I think you're taking something away from his game. I think him playing in the wing-back position, I think that will be absolutely perfect for him. I think his energy, the pace that he's got, I think he could be getting to bylines. Sometimes his delivery does let him down. I'm not denying that, but I think you're taking something away from him with his dynamic strength that he's got. Stepping in, I don't think he's the greatest on the ball, and I'm saying on the ball as in if he's stepping into positions, is he going to be a player that's going to be able to step into midfield and pick a pass out? Personally, I don't see that from him. So I think you might have been better off going with maybe, I know John Stones is going to start the game, but maybe having John Stones on that right-hand side who's able to step in, who's better on the ball and getting into more advanced positions. And then you've got Kyle Walker who's playing further forward and he's able then to get and play as a winger, essentially. That's the way that I would see it. But he feels as though that he needs to get Trippier into the side, who probably has better quality when he gets in wide positions. I would say that. And with that quality, he feels as though he can create more chances. That's the way that Southgate's seen it.
That's interesting, because I would have thought, looking at this England squad and looking at the projected team, that this is the first time we've had an England team in a major tournament that makes sense based on positions, based on maximising what you've got in the squad. Like, obviously, famously, you can use the Lampard and Gerrard example of how they've failed to do that in the past. Is that the only position you see where a player might not be maximised to his potential, or is there other players around the pitch where they're kind of just being put in there because they are one of the best 11 players in the squad?
No, I think you're right in that. I think probably 9-10 of the players are being played to the in the natural positions you feel as well. I think up front, I think is where England could hurt sides. It just depends on, as I said before, how Tunisia are going to sit in against them or not. Are they going to really stifle Kane? Are they going to deny any sort of space in behind for the likes of Sterling to move off Kane? That's the thing that you're maybe looking at it with England. But I think overall, I think there's a good balance to the side. Yes, and in answer to your question, that is probably the only position where you feel as though that Tunisia could exploit a little bit. And now, you're not going to exploit Kyle Walker for pace, but just with a little bit of clever movement, a ball being played over the top, are you going to get him sucked under the ball? That's what could happen here, and that's what maybe sides are looking at England from if you're looking at them from a vulnerability point of view. That's where you could get at them. The only one I would say maybe as well within that starting 11, I think you'd have to try and find a way to get Rashford into that side. And I know he's been struggling with that knee injury. He's probably going to be the first sub. I like Rashford. I think Rashford's top class. I think he's a quality player. So that would be the only one I'd look at. But overall, I don't think England fans could really argue that the balance of that side is fairly accurate, really.
A word on Spain on Friday night. Owen ploughed into them in the middle of the game when they were 3-2 up. Thinks that they were the best performance that he's seen so far, and that actually he's nailed on that they're going to win at the moment today.
Well, I've got them back to win it. I've got them back to win it at 6-1 the tournament. I had them back to beat Portugal the other night as well, so I was a bit gutted in that one. But they were the best. They were so dominant, weren't they? They were brilliant to watch. I thought they were brilliant. I mean, it's one of the best games you're ever likely to see, I'd feel, overall. And they were undone by maybe sloppy defending, because that seems to what you're going to look at. What we're going to look at throughout this tournament. Yeah, even looking at Brazil last night. Brazil looked vulnerable defensively. They looked sloppy. Could have been a push to the goal. Don't get me wrong, but leaving a man who's free, not necessarily opening your body in that position, so you're able to jump up against the defender last night from a Brazilian point of view. That's what you're going to see. We're going to see sides looking vulnerable defensively, looking quite poor defensively, and that is where Spain come into it. That could go against them. But I think Spain played unbelievable football of the night. It was great to watch.
What's your view being of VAR so far, Kevin?
I mean, I was doing in the Peru game. It worked brilliantly. I thought it was excellent. I thought the referee wasn't so sure. It looked a penalty to me straight away in running. You could tell it was a penalty with the way that Cueva manipulated the ball, and they got it right ultimately. I didn't necessarily see the need for the referee to leave the pitch. I think that could have been a clear message to him: give the penalty. It's 100% penalty. Stay on the pitch. It's done. But that's the way that they're going to work it. With the referee goes on, and maybe understand it that he wants to see it personally himself to make sure he's making the correct call. The Griezmann penalty for France, I don't think that is a clear and obvious penalty to give. I understand that maybe you can look at it a few different angles and think, but it's got to be clear and obvious in my mind. I don't think that should have been given. I understand the argument for giving it, but me personally, how can you clearly state that was a penalty? Because as soon as the Australian defender, he does get a little touch on the ball. That's irrelevant though, because the way that it is now, Griezmann then takes the ball beyond him. But Griezmann is diving; he's going looking for that penalty. So it wasn't clear and obvious in my mind. So I feel as though it's been a bit hit and miss. But I think it probably, by and large, I think it is better. It has been good. It's much better than the system that we've seen being used over in England in the FA Cup and League Cup games this season. I think it's worked quite effectively, other than that one, because that's the only one I'd maybe call on.
What about the push in the back? Should it be used for situations like that where there's...
Yeah, it probably is a foul. That's the thing. It probably is a foul. Was it Miranda? I think it was. It's going to jump for the ball. He does get a shove. He gets a push under the ball. Is it enough? Personally, I think Miranda's poor defensive shape, defensive body, because I think he needs to get his body open there, and I think he needs to get hold of the Swiss defender with his body open. He shuts himself off, so it's poor defending in my mind. Perhaps it should have been though. Yeah, it probably was a foul overall. It probably was. Yeah, but I maybe understand it because it probably wasn't generally like I'm saying the France one.
Yeah.
Was it clear and obvious? If it's not clear and obvious, if it's not that, then maybe you shouldn't overturn them.
It's not clear and obvious.
But there's two hands. If you push two hands in the back, like what are the hands for? I saw somebody make the case that the hands are there to protect your own space, and that you're allowed to do that. But I think that's a pretty grey area, isn't it?
Exactly. It's a slight shove, Jerry, isn't it? It's a slight shove. It's a touch, and and I get your point. Is if you're looking at it overall, you know yourself, even no matter what level anyone's been playing at, when you're going to go and jump for a ball and someone gives you a little shove in the back, it puts you off, so it's a foul.
Yeah.
But is it enough to overturn? That's the thing that I'd look at. I still think, look, it's got to be something that's definitely clear, and they're all clear incidents, and I personally just don't think it was enough. I think he should have been stronger there, and I think he should have had his body open and seen the attacking player.
You know full well that he would have gone down like a sack of spuds if it had been the other penalty area. That would have been. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Can you see any other teams outside the top teams winning this? Because we were just talking so Spain don't have a victory, Brazil don't have a victory, Argentina don't have a victory, Germany don't have a victory. If you were to if you'd gambled on that pre-tournament in the first round of group games, you'd be a rich person by this stage. But can you see somebody like Belgium, like Croatia, or somebody like that making a really deep run, potentially all the way to the final and winning this thing?
Well, they have looked nervy, the top sides, and that's understandable. First game, no matter what you think, you're playing your first World Cup game, the nerves, the night before a match you can't sleep, you get up and the nerves are there because it's the biggest thing. look, we're all going to talk about the quality that's within Champions League again, but it means more. It does mean more, no matter what anybody says. It does. So the nerves are there, and that's going to happen to all the best players as well. I can't see anyone outside it. Croatia looked good at times. I like Croatia anyway, but they were brilliant in the group stages at the Euros, and they blew it when they got out against Portugal. So I don't know. I think in general, I think you're looking at those top 6 sides. Spain have been the most impressive side that I've seen up to now.
Uruguay for me, Kev, in terms of that. It's the one big problem they had on Friday was Luis Suarez not putting the ball in the back of the net. If that's the only problem you've got to fix, then you're in a pretty good place, particularly because how unbelievably impressive Godin and Jimenez were on Friday as well. They were rock solid. They were outstanding for them. And if Suarez somehow finds the back of the net a couple of times and that confidence is up and his tail is up, there's a semi-final there for Uruguay.
Yeah, do you know what? I only saw the last 25 minutes of that game. I was getting to the airport, and then I got to the airport, and I saw the incident, and I saw it later on where it was a bit more open. But yeah, I mean, that you looked at Uruguay defensively anyway. They are going to be so difficult to break down. They're going to be difficult to play against the way that they play. And you've got quality. You've got Cavani and of course Suarez. So they'll be difficult to beat. They should get out, and then they take the chances, don't they? Whoever they play.
One last question. You said it's the biggest thing for these guys, even bigger than the Champions League. We had Dave McIntyre sitting where Owen was last week.
I was listening to it. Jay was listening to it. Don't get me started on Dave. Dave just
what did he say?
Sorry, Owen doesn't know. Let me just paint the picture here. We're talking about Mo Salah, and he's like, the Sergio Ramos thing happens in the biggest game of his life. He needs to strap himself up and get on with it. And I was like, yeah, I agree, but it's not the biggest game of his life because he might reach a World Cup quarter-final with Egypt, and that would clearly be a bigger game than the Champions League final. They're like, what? What are you talking about? Don't be stupid.
Well, honestly, Dave McIntyre's wrong, obviously.
But it is. I'm not being funny. It is. It means so much to a player individually. You only need to see what it meant to Mo Salah when he got them qualified, when he scored the winning penalty in the last match, in the last few minutes when Egypt qualified. It's. I mean, yeah. Dave's point is accurate, and the fact is that it's probably you're going to see a better standard of football when you get into the late stage. You've seen real top quality, but it doesn't mean more. It does, and no way does it mean more. And you only need to see what other supporters when they're turning up here as well in Russia. The World Cup means more, no matter what we're thinking quality wise.
And so, a World Cup quarter final for Mohamed Salah is a much bigger game than the Champions League final because you can get in the Champions League final again at some point.
Of course, it's way bigger.
Yeah. Way bigger, way bigger for himself personally, for his family, for everything that he's grown up with. You're putting pressure on that first game. That's what I mean. I was saying before, when you're putting pressure on the first game. I think from my own point of view, you grow up watching World Cups. You want to play in a World Cup. That's all you want to do. You want to play in a World Cup, and then the eve of the game, you're thinking, shit, like it's the nerves are there with you, and that's whether you're Mo Salah, Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi. It's because. Particularly if you're Ronaldo and Messi, because these lads now, this is the last chance.
Yeah.
This is the last chance to real go for greatness, and that's the way that it is.
Yeah, and Ronaldo's made it. Right, Kev, great stuff. Thanks a million. Where are you off to next? What's your next game?
I'm back to Saransk. I am doing bloody hell. I'm trying to think now. It's Colombia, Japan, and then I'm back in the studio. Then back to Moscow for Portugal, Morocco.
Nice.
So yeah, it's got to. I tell you what, it would say one lads. Get into the stadium security wise. Oh, I tell you what, those Russian police, they give you a serious cupping. Let me tell you that. Honestly, unbelievable. They make sure they're checking every part of your body. Don't worry about that.
Added bonus. Kev, thanks very much.
Go on, see you lads. Take it easy.
That's the DVD extra material right there. Quick note, Spain to beat Iran is the special price of 10-1 on offtheball.com/boilsports for new accounts. So I think Spain probably will beat Iran at this point. Iran
are flying high at the moment.
So if you don't have a Boil Sports account, you can get on to offtheball.com/boilsports. 10-1 about Spain to beat Iran, but only through our offer page, which is offtheball.com/boilsports.
Indeed it is. What was it? Looking at the England opening games, there's a fantastic stat here. Since 1950, England have played 23 opening games in major tournaments. They've won 5 of them.
Right.
That's we know they're bad.
Spain's record is also crap in opening games.
It is recently anyway, yeah.
Well,
how far does it go back?
It was like 3 wins out of 12 or something like that. So not good.
No.
And that bad run has extended.
Yeah, like that. I'm still trying to get my head around the idea that a Champions League final with Liverpool might be a bigger game for Mo Salah than a quarter final with Egypt. You know, when you're the absolute not only talisman of the team, but a national icon that will transcend all other icons for decades to come. Like, borderline.
Or he could be one of a trio of forwards who everybody loves. I mean, obviously, he's the best and most important, but
it is still, you're just a cog in grotesque capitalism while playing gorgeous football that everybody likes to watch.
Yeah.
But you got to. Dave is clearly just kind of a fervent capitalist who just kind of engages in stuff that is plastic and beautiful, but not sometimes unbeautiful and real, really.
Right. Wow.
That's my
shade thrown, and he's not even here to defend himself.
My psychological analysis of that take.
We'll get him in on the crappy quiz on Friday. You can have this out if you want.
Yeah, well, I'll be behind that glass, safe and sound from the biceps.
Are we going to Australia? Let's go to Australia. Alan Quinlan, good morning to you. How you doing?
Morning, lads. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good. Have you travelled to Sydney yet?
Yeah, I'm here in Sydney. Came here last night, so it's the weather's not getting any better, Ger. Unfortunately, you think it's you think of Australia, you think sunny weather, but unfortunately, it's their winter. We have a bit of a storm in Sydney today.
Right, class.
Not good.
A couple of things we want to talk to you about: the All Blacks and the red cards. Benjamin Fell's red card has been overturned overnight in this part of the world, obviously across the day for you guys, and it has just reached epidemic proportions where all the refereeing decisions always go to New Zealand. And it's so weird because this is a team that doesn't need the refereeing decisions to go their way, and yet they do. Now, it's okay for us, I think, to make these points now, but you just know that come November when Ireland play them, there's going to be high tackles, there's going to be non-properly wrapped tackles, there'll be offside, and there'll be a bunch of decisions that the All Blacks get because that's what happens for some reason.
Yeah, you get that feeling when you play against them. I played against them a few times as well, and that sometimes referees are a little bit intimidated by them, about the aura of playing against or refereeing against the All Blacks. And yeah, look, I think they're quite abrasive and aggressive and very physical the way they play. And I suppose you go back to that game in November in 2016 when there was couple of unsavoury incidents. There was a couple of offsides that kind of could have affected the game in a more positive way for Ireland, and they just go their way. So it seems to be a recurring theme. Last week's incident with Remy Grosso, I think that sent out the wrong message. Look, I don't think there's huge intent in there, but when you go in with that shoulder drive into a side of a player, I know the level of the height of the player is going at. If you cite or suspend or do something about that from World Rugby's point of view, it'll stop people diving in with the shoulder, and we're talking about helping people and protecting people, particularly around concussion and head injuries, and that just sent out the wrong message. So I think they made a major mistake there. I don't think, look, the player came out and apologised afterwards, but Remy Grosso's gone off with 2 fractures in the side of his face, and it's wrong. It was handled wrong. I think the incident at the weekend, it's a hard one for Angus Gardner. I think it possibly, it possibly is by letter of the law a red card, but I don't think there's any intention there. And, it's been deemed now to be, not, it's by the citing committee and the judicial committee afterwards that it's not a red card. So it's a bit of a strange one again. That one was harder to judge because you're talking about, player intent. And, and there was obviously intent from Benjamin Fall, but certainly the player comes down on the back of his head, and by the letter of the law, it's a red card.
Yeah, and so they're saying that there's a dunt from the other New Zealand player before Fall tries to jump, and that's what sets him off balance, and that's what sends him into Barrett. I'm less concerned about the nuances of getting that decision right than the fact that they were intent on applying the letter of the law. that they actually went and carefully reconsidered every single available angle to them. Whereas the previous week it was like, "No, that's grand, off you go. Oh, he's got a broken face. Well, that's a pity. Off you go. It doesn't matter." It's like this kind of weird sense of we have to hyper police whatever injustice is done towards New Zealand, but that we're actually not really going to look at that too much when it is New Zealand. Now, maybe this is just the way that we look at it because we've seen it so often, and maybe, I don't know, we have a weird sense of paranoia around this, but it seems to me like New Zealand are refereed differently from everybody else.
Yeah, I think, look, last week's decision was wrong, I think, and World Rugby made a major mistake. I think if Benjamin Fall gets 2 or 3 weeks suspension this time, there wouldn't be as much uproar about it. There would be sympathy because there was mitigating factors, and that's what the panel found, that he got pushed. His eye was on the ball all the time. But there's certainly, there's a lot of decisions. And like I said, Jerry, I played against him a couple of times, and you just get that feeling that you have to have a blatant penalty to get one. But they're outstanding rugby players, to be fair. And, Steve Hansen's come out on the weekend and he said, look, there needs to be maybe some sort of a card that reports a player when they're involved in one of these incidents. And they had sympathy for Benjamin Fall. It's easy in hindsight to say that. John Kerwin spoke out about it, that it ruined the game as well from a spectator's point of view. But the big problem is the week before. That was wrong. There was time to look at that. It was a shoulder straight into the side of the face, and it's sending out the wrong message about safety in rugby. And they really got that one wrong. But I don't think we're going to hear the end of that one. I think that one is going to crop up again, and I think it may be looked at, and World Rugby might have to come out and make some sort of a statement or a proper, more detailed explanation as to why they didn't take action.
I hope so. I hope we haven't heard the end of it. Before we get on to Ireland, I want to talk about Eddie Jones as well. He's 5 games in a row they've lost now. This again, they put themselves in a winning position with 2 early tries against South Africa. The RFU are laying off a massive amount of people because they're short on funds, but they've ring-fenced 30 million to continue to prepare the senior international team. In fairness, that is their cash cow, and that's where the majority of their cash is coming from. So that's what they're talking about. They've backed Eddie Jones with a terse cursory statement. The Telegraph has gone to the pains to point out that it's not a ringing endorsement of him. Is it 50-50 that Eddie Jones is still the England coach come the next World Cup, or is he a bit more secure than that?
No, it's 50-50. I think there's pressure on. I think go back to the Six Nations and speaking before to some ex-internationals, English internationals before the England game, and there was a little bit of discontent coming out of the camp that they're being overtrained, and physically the sessions are very draining. It's quite at times a bit of a hard place to be. That it's relentless. And, look, we've heard some of that stuff from Joe Schmidt about Joe Schmidt's teams, that it's get your game face on when you drive into Carton House, and it's about the detail and preparing for the game. But I think Eddie Jones, you either like him or don't like him. There's probably no middle ground. I think he's a good coach, but I think he's certainly, there's rumours that he's losing the dressing room a little bit, and there's a lot of chopping and changing, but in turn, Rassie Erasmus, he's done a fantastic job. I watched the game last week with Donald Lenihan, the first 20 minutes, and we said, oh God, that wasn't been a good choice for Rassie to go back to South Africa. And then we started staring at each other for the rest of the game, going, what the hell is going on here? England are just, they look a little bit unhappy, they look frustrated, they look narky, and they look under pressure. They're making a lot of bad decisions on the field. They still have a lot of talented players, but their discipline is really, really poor. And honestly, cannot believe there are some of the penalties they're giving away. And I know I was good at them myself when I played, but some of them are really, really basic, and it's hurting the team, and it's costing them in crucial areas. And all is not right there. But I think it is 50-50 now because, England rugby is such a massive organisation that they either have to make a decision pretty soon, because you don't want to be going into the start of this season looking at with 12 months out from a World Cup, and if the results started going poor in November, it'll be hard to build it back up again for a World Cup.
Yeah.
But look, I just think they're going through a bad period. I think they need to he needs to circle the wagons. He needs to get people on side, players, management. He needs to keep a bit of unity, and winning becomes a habit as well as losing, and there's massive pressure on them. They've lost the series, but they've got to try and win on Saturday against South Africa and get some positives. Now, there's a lot of players injured, a lot of players he had to leave at home. Billy Vunipola has broken his arm again. That's not good news for him. But I think it's 50-50.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's move on to the Ireland game. A much better performance from Ireland. Still a few bits and pieces that they'd want to work on, and no guarantees heading into the third test given the injury toll after the second one. But a vastly superior performance in the key aspects of the game, which really set the platform for victory.
Yeah, look, the stat that jumps out that we mentioned last week is 21 turnovers. If you lose the ball that often, whether it be at the breakdown, loose kicks, knock-ons or whatever, it's going to have a big say on the result in the end. And this week it was 9, and that's a figure that you can live with. There's always going to be a loose kick. There's always going to be a couple of knock-ons, a couple of little errors and mistakes here and there, but it's way down. 21 last week was way too high, and Australia missed 34 tackles as well. That came from relentless pressure from Ireland. This was probably the true Ireland team that we saw, the team that were Grand Slam winners a couple of months ago. Sexton coming back into the team was magnificent, and he just seems to put pressure on guys around him. Ringrose was really good. Tyke Furlong. Scannell did really well. I think a few eyebrows at his selection, but he played well. And Devin Toner as well. He doesn't get the credit sometimes he deserves. He was fantastic, as were the other guys. James Ryan again it's unbelievable watching him. He's so intelligent, makes so many good decisions. And then the back row, Peter O'Mahony, the 3 huge turnovers, and Stander was really good. Levy unfortunately had to go off, but then Jordy Murphy comes on and makes a real statement again. So the platform they laid on for Conor Murray was phenomenal. And like I said about stats, Jerry, you can't win a game with 30% possession, 35% possession 2 weeks in a trot. They won it last week, and they just couldn't do it again, Australia. You can't just have that little ball and expect to win a game. Now, it's crazy in a sense that the last couple of minutes of the game, Ireland are hanging on, and it's squeaky bum time. Ireland should have been so far ahead there, and that's down to different factors of maybe not taking their chances when they had them, and certainly refereeing decisions as well.
Stephen Ferris was saying on Sky Sports, as I'm sure you heard, Alan, that Ireland out-Pococked Pocock. Is that a mental shift from Ireland, or is that a tactical thing? Is there anything tangible that they did on the ground there that you noticed that made all the difference?
Nothing tangible, just way more urgency out of everyone. I think it can happen on when you're... and it's not just your back row, it's throughout the team. I saw Ringrose, Henshaw just blasting guys out of the way, Earls, Rob Carney secure all, just their urgency to get around each other and really secure the breakdown. Now, when you play against those guys, you have an extra kind of edge and an extra nervousness, if you like. And the whole team are just fantastic at that. And they play a lot together. And this is one of the hallmarks of why Ireland have been successful, because their breakdown is good. And it's a real kind of strength of any team that Joe Schmidt coaches. He puts massive emphasis on technique, removing the threat really aggressively, and they were superb at that. The surprise was it didn't happen last week, the week before. There was a little bit of, that was down to Australia being dominant themselves and their carries. And sometimes negating the threat of the breakdown isn't just about cleaning out, it's about the ball carrier, his attitude, his body position, staying on your feet for a second or two if you are a little bit isolated, but also doing that wriggle on the ground where you're fighting and twisting and turning, and it just buys you a second or two. So from a technical point of view, they were really good. They've got to do that again this week and, build the same kind of pressure. And I think Michael Cheika says he wasn't surprised, but I think the Australian public were surprised, and the ex-Australian players, I think, they thought Australia were going to get much better, and they fancied their chances. None of them gave us a chance on Saturday. I was quite surprised. And they don't know a lot about the Irish players, which is another situation that kind of annoys me. But if Ireland win on Saturday night and win a series, they'll certainly know about them for a while down here.
Yeah, it sounds like you're making us favourites heading into that last game.
I'm not. I think it's 50-50, Ger. think, look, they will. I think Michael Cheika picked the same 23. There's a couple of guys, I don't know if they'll start. Caleb Timu was ineffective. There's talks that Tuhi will come into the back row. Tupou was very, very good at tight head when he came on. He made a lot of fair impact, the guy who got the try. Latu was very good when he came in at hooker. So I think he'll make changes. Not so many in the back line, but I think he needs to get a little bit of a dynamic presence up front, a little bit more aggression. Look, they did it the week before. There's no reason why they can't. The reality is, if they don't front up against Ireland, they know it now. They've experienced it firsthand. But I think Ireland can get better from this. And it was interesting listening to Conor Murray today. They don't want to let this one slip. There's a real belief in this team. You think back 2 years ago, Jared, they won in South Africa for the first time in history. They beat the All Blacks a couple of months later for the first time. They've beaten Australia for the first time in 39 years. They've won 2 championships, a Grand Slam. This team just keeps achieving, and it's phenomenal. A lot of that is down to character and belief as well. Of course, you have to have the quality, but they believe now that they can go and win a series. That will help them. But I think, look, it is 50-50. Australia are very dangerous, and I think they have issues about holding on to the ball and building pressure, because, like I say, on law of averages, you can't win a game with 60, 65, without 60, 65% possession. And Australia have had to do that 2 weeks in a row, and they got punished for it this week. And they had no line breaks. They had 1 line break in the game. Ireland had 8 clean line breaks. So Ireland were just setting the tone. Their execution was so much better than the week before. And but look, they've got to maintain that and try and improve on that this week again.
Last question for you is about team selection. There's been a sense of some mild experimentation up to this point. Is there any possibility, any room for experimentation, or is it full team, full board? Like, do we see Cooney at 9, for example, to start a game, maybe? Or is this too serious now that the whole series is in the melting pot and actually you just pick your strongest team?
For me, you just pick your strongest team, Ger. It's a series win that you're trying to get here. Look, I think it's, in an ideal world, you'd love to have won the first 2 and be completely change over the third, but it's not possible. I think he's got to pick the strongest team. I think maybe a little bit of rotation. I think Jack Conan may feature somewhere from the start. Ian Henderson might come back into the team. Will Bundy Aki feature again at 12? I'm not sure, but Ross Byrne is the only player in the squad who hasn't got got any action, which is tough on him, I think. But he will have learned a lot being involved in the squad in that environment. He's still very young and a quality player, but I wouldn't experiment. I think you've got to pick the fittest, strongest available team that you have for the weekend and try and win a series here, because this will be in the memory bank going to Japan next year, and these kind of significant milestones that I've mentioned are very, very important things that you can draw on.
Yeah, coming back from a setback as well, also important. Alan, great stuff. Enjoy the week in Sydney. Thanks a million.
Cheers, lads. Thanks.
We'll talk again to Alan later on in the week when we do know exactly what the team is. Now, going to speak with Michael Meehan about the Connacht football final in just a moment. First, here's James O'Connor talking to Maura Trossan-Nikiali about how Clare's season has turned around in the space of 7 days after back-to-back wins against Tip and Limerick.
Yeah, the game is all over here in Cusack Park, and we've just had a little bit of time to do a little bit of analysis. James O'Connor, it wasn't a classic, but as a Clare man, you don't mind.
Absolutely not, Maura Trossan. I mean, it was all about the result today. I suppose really they were playing for a place in the Munster final. And Clare's season, I think has turned in the space of 7 days. To go down to Thurles and dig out that result last weekend and follow it up then with a really impressive performance today. The graph is very much now heading in the right direction. And, I think huge positive. And I certainly didn't see an 11-point win coming for Clare today. I'm just delighted that we did.
I was listening to the Limerick manager downstairs, John Kiley, and he said perhaps Clare wanted or needed to be in the Munster final more. Would you concur with that?
Maybe in a way, yeah. I mean, look, Clare obviously got there last season and didn't perform against Cork. You know, that was a really, I think, a big step back to the team. Just the fact that they got to the occasion and didn't produce, anything close to their best. And then to go down to Páirc Uí Chaoimh this year and again and play probably quite well in for large patches of that match, and again not get anything out of it. I think they'll relish another opportunity at getting a crack at Cork. And the Munster Championship was a big thing, I suppose, for that team back in the 1990s, and it's a stick that's maybe been used to beat the current team with. That okay, we have the All-Ireland from 2013, but I reckon the Munster Championship hasn't been good enough, and these guys want that Munster medal. I have 3 of them and treasure all 3. It's still a huge prize we're playing for, and I think, as I said, it's important for the Clare players that they get back to another one, they get another chance, and if they win it, then the silverware on the board, and we can drive on from there. But the Munster Championship has been incredible, and I suppose just today's game maybe didn't hit the heights that we've seen maybe over the past 4 weeks, but from a Clare perspective, I think we'll take where we are. Yeah.
We'll do a bit more on the hurling week on tomorrow's show, but we're sticking with the football now. Michael Meehan is on the line to talk to us about the Galway victory, the first team through to the Super 8s. Hard fought, hard won in the end. Michael, what impressed you, before we talk about some of the difficulties that Galway had, but what impressed you about Galway's performance yesterday?
A couple of key individuals, namely Shane Walsh had his most consistent, spectacular game for Galway in Championship that I think we've seen to date, and we've always seen bits and pieces from him at different stages, and he's always shown us what he's capable of. But yesterday he really put it together over the 75 or 80 minutes, and when it was sticky in the first half and all one way from a Roscommon perspective, he was the one man who was getting the scores for Galway, taking the attack to Roscommon. And I think he was involved in every score in the first half that Galway got. He scored 3, and I think he was the assist for the other 2 to Ian Burke as well, are very much involved in the play. So that was he had a fine performance, Ian Burke as well, for Galway. They were the kind of the standout things when I look back on it.
The other thing I think that we should talk about here is that Galway were clearly spooked by what happened to them in the Connacht final last year against Roscommon. And so we can take the game in isolation and go, oh, Galway didn't play to their full potential in that first half. Or we can take it as part of a historic sequence of events and go, okay, I can understand why they were a little bit nervy in that first half and a little bit less aggressive than maybe we know they're capable of being. And this is part of the evolution of the team, isn't it? Isn't like coming through these things more important than the manner sometimes?
Yeah, big time. You're right in what you're saying. They would have had a huge amount of respect for Roscommon coming into yesterday's game. Personally, I thought, having got the wind at their back more or less in the first half, I would have thought Galway would have then, okay, you know what, we'll take the chance, we will push up on them. But it seemed that they didn't adopt that approach. They were happy enough to let Roscommon build play, or to own more possession than. Possibly when we reflect on the full game now, we can say, why did Galway play like that? Why didn't they just go straight at them from the beginning? But it's not as simplistic as that either. So, yeah, the overall riding factor is that Galway would be delighted that they managed the game. Obviously, that type of first half performance is a lot more energy conserving than energy draining. And by far and away, Galway finished the match, what looked like the stronger, more physical and harder running team in the second half. And whether that was by coincidence or by design, in terms of how their overall play panned out first half versus second half, they'll still be happy enough that they, number one, got the win. They showed huge potential in some of their strong aspects of play, and they have 3 or 4 weeks now to work on some of the sloppy stuff that they wouldn't be happy with at all from the first half.
There's been a lot of talk in the wake of the match about the halftime team talk that Kevin Walsh delivered to the team. I think it was Shane Walsh, said they got a rollicking at halftime. What sort of team talk, how rousing can he be in those sort of situations, Kevin Walsh?
Yeah, Kevin will call it as it is. He's a long time there, and he knows himself as a player what needs to be said, and he knows the lads well, and I think they know him, so they detect the disappointment or the anger in his voice very easily. Whatever he wanted to transfer to the group. But I've no doubt that there was strong voices coming out of the playing body as well, because, knowing it themselves, they were kind of staring down the barrel of it, going a little bit, having, flashbacks to last year. And I know, last year hurt a huge amount to that Galway group. The way Roscommon wiped us out in a kind of final last year, we would have felt at the time that was wasn't reflective of where we were at in comparison to Roscommon. So there would have been a huge player appetite there to right those wrongs, and I've no doubt it was some of the players who chimed in as well with them, Owen, to kind of make sense of it all and outline, what had to happen in the oncoming 40 minutes.
In terms of the way Roscommon managed to punch a few holes in Galway's defence yesterday, that's kind of one element of it. But the other element is the first Roscommon goal. And I'm wondering, is that a potential weakness consistently going forward, that if you get the ball down the sides of the Galway defence of their D, then you will get in behind them, you will get success, you will bear down on goal more often than not? And with strong corner forwards potentially coming down the line in their first Super 8 game, which could be against Kerry, could that be a potential weakness, or was that really just an anomaly yesterday, that first goal?
It was a great goal by Kieran Murta. He just identified the one-on-one with Galway's centre forward and probably said, you know what, I'll take this out for a run here and see how we get on. If he was faced up against maybe one of the named backs, he mightn't have been as aggressive on that approach. But certainly Galway and every team, protect the D, protect that scoring zone where a high percentage of scores are taken from. So there can be more space on the sidelines in every team. So I don't think it's going to be a huge point of play. It's nothing new that Galway are doing to anyone else really in terms of being, compacting in front of the main scoring area. What was noticeable as well, Owen, in the second half is some of Roscommon's wayward shooting were from those areas, out on the sidelines in the low percentage zones, and they inevitably, I suppose, hindered Roscommon's chances in the second half. They never were able to build any momentum because some of their shots just weren't really on. They were taking them from left hand side, right hand side, and just ballooning them. They weren't working out, and that kind of fed into what happened in the second half.
I'm sure you saw the Brawley narrative about how pre-game he was like, look, Galway can realistically put it up to Dublin. The first half wasn't the right approach. The second half is a bit more like it, but they have to go like that full time if they're going to actually progress. Like, it's actually fairly obvious stuff that if you want to take on the best team in the country, you're going to have to attack them and you're going to have to be good enough to go 70, 80 minutes with them. I do feel like outside counties, we don't really fully appreciate the psychic trauma that is inflicted by heavy defeats by your neighbours. It's just a very natural thing that, like, there's this kind of ghost of defeats past, particularly one so fresh in the memory. So, like, I don't read too much into the fact that Galway didn't do that in the first half and that they came out in the second half and actually, particularly that last 10 minutes, like, that was clutch. That was championship winning type of performance.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. I think you do. You have to give these games, their own kind of setting and environment, and how you've explained it is exactly it. And even if we scale it back maybe 5-6 weeks, whatever it was, to the Mayo game, that again was another game there was so much expected of it to kind of launch this year's championship. But I was fairly confident we were going to get the game that we got because we have two teams very competitive with each other and just they know each other so well at this stage. So that game was looked at in isolation in my mind, and what transpired was kind of along the lines as what most people or some people would have expected to happen. So it's kind of managing opponents who you're lining up against as they come. The next likely opponent, as Ona said, is if Kerry win the Munster final next weekend, that's who Galway play in Croke Park in the middle of July. So there's a big task and challenge there, and that's a game that Galway will have to approach, with a different mindset again. If you gave a first half like that yesterday to Kerry in Croke Park, I don't think there'd be any comeback in the second half. So and I think that there's no anyone could identify that. So it's going to be part and parcel of what Galway try and do in terms of building their game plan. And how a game plan changes, during a game, and it's very, very difficult to go hard for 80 minutes. I don't think it can be done. I don't think any of the top teams do it. There's always times where they soak up a bit of pressure when the opposition have the ball, conserve that little bit of energy, and prioritise periods in a match when they know they have to really go at them. And maybe there was a little bit of that at play yesterday as well.
Yeah. All in all, I'd say Galway fans are pretty happy with the way things are going. Their superstar marquee forward that everybody had been talking about pre-season isn't going to be the only focal point for their attack. They now have, Owen was already anointing all-stars on Twitter after the performance yesterday. But it's got to that point where teams are definitely going to have a look here and think, ooh, this Galway attack is for real.
Yeah, there's a few more. There's every attack, any forward line you wanted to play in, having a couple of really key forwards, it's brilliant, because on their day they'll go to town. But these lads are going to be well earmarked by the main players in the Kerry team, or whoever they come across for the rest of the year. The Shane Walshes, the Damien Comers are always going to be on the top of the list. But that gives great maybe license, or it opens up maybe a little bit of more space for the other lads who aren't perceived in that bracket. And sometimes it's someone bombing on into that zone, maybe out of the midfield, or Johnny Heaney from half back. But there's plenty of food for thought there for any management team that are coming up against Galway as to what they need to do and who they need to prioritise in their defensive play. Because at the minute, Shane Walsh showed it yesterday. Damien Comer had been very strong. Even Sean Armstrong came in there yesterday. He intercepted 2 balls, won a free off one of them. He scored a point. So someone like that coming into a game when it's tight is going to need to be managed by an opposition as well. So that they have their attack. It's in fairly good nick when they go at it. The concerns are just getting the balance of how they play right over the course of the game.
What's your take on where Roscommon are at, Michael? Is it a matter of if their kick-out gets stopped in the way Galway managed to do it yesterday, they're in a bit of trouble because it doesn't open up Enda Smith to have that sort of autonomy that can kill a team? Yeah, and I know second half especially, Galway wiped them out on their own kick-out. And overall in the game, I think it was something, I don't have the exact stats, but something like Roscommon only won maybe... I forget, I don't have it to hand, but definitely in the second half, Galway absolutely dominated the Roscommon kick-out, and that was a launch pad. Flicking back a year ago, it was Roscommon who dominated all kick-outs, Galway and Roscommon, or got the majority, that set them up for their big win against Galway. So it seems to be an area where it's their platform to get Enda Smith into play, get him on the ball. He's very creative going forward. Cathal Compton went off early, just before half-time yesterday. He was having a big influence on the game. He is a man that they need in around the middle of the field, back for the rest of the season. Like certain parts of their play were super yesterday. The craft that they showed albeit I suppose Galway had their numbers back and set up, but maybe they weren't functioning to their optimum. But Roscommon showed really good ingenuity, or just craft and guile to kind of give a little. There was 1 or 2 occasions where they hand passed the ball, they bounced it onto the ground and into a fella's hand. That was their way of kind of getting through the traffic, and they looked really creative. And it was something last week we spoke about, that it was their forward play that you would fear. Now they only kicked 8 scores yesterday and 2 scores in the second half, so that you can say, Mike, geez, that's not great reflection on a forward unit, but it comes down to the possession that they were securing out the field, coming from midfield, and it was most noticeable when Galway in the first half, they allowed Roscommon have the ball, they allowed them work it up to the pitch, and loads of Roscommon players in the middle third handle loads of ball. They had a hop, they had a solo, they had a handy pass to someone beside them. When there was no pressure on them, their confidence grew, and that's when they were dangerous. In the second half then, when Galway squeezed up on them and cut off, pressurised the man on the ball, and every other potential Roscommon man who was to take the pass off was man marked as well. All of a sudden then they had no time to think, the pressure was on, the ball was being played around in their half back line, and they weren't comfortable with that. And that's something that they're going to have to adjust to if they come up against, they may not meet a Division 1 side in the qualifier. They'll be looking to get to Super 8s, but they'll be coming up against that intensity level. And, it's a big step up for them, I'd say, overall, having been Division 2 all year, playing Leitrim in the semi-final. So it's maybe a game that they needed, but they still have a good mix of players. They still have a forward unit there that will score every day they go out. So they'll have a tricky few days now to kind of gather their thoughts, but I don't think we've seen the last of them either.
And just enough time to get that out of their system and get ready for.
Yeah, they've 3 weeks, I think.
Yeah, so like it might actually be one week too many, but it's maybe after a defeat like that, you need a week of licking your wounds and then 2 weeks to prepare.
You need time, yeah. The graveyard shift was when you got the qualifier the week after you got beaten in championship, because I think 70-80% of the teams, no matter who they are, lose in that environment. So yeah, they've avoided that. That doesn't happen anymore. And I know coming into yesterday's game, they had several lads maybe who had missed maybe 2-3 weeks of training with slight injuries in the run up to this game. So they'd be hoping maybe if they get a couple of good weeks of collective training now, once they get over this and analyse it, that they'll be able to set themselves up for another little crack at this.
Michael, great stuff. Thanks a million.
Okay, lads, good luck.
Michael Meehan giving us some thoughts there yesterday. Kerry worried by what they saw yesterday?
I think any team will be worried by the way Shane Walsh managed to be so absolutely brilliant in a team that was playing crap. Like, that is the sign of a great team, when you've got a forward who's just reeling off the points, who's keeping you within arm's length and keeping you in the game, even though you've had close to a systems failure. That's what yesterday was in the first half of Galway, close to a systems failure, the way Roscommon managed to walk through them time and time again. Of course, they were helped by the fact that Roscommon didn't turn all that possession into scores. And if you couldn't see the flags on the pitch, you would have thought that the wind was going the other way. Like, it makes no sense that Galway would conserve their energy in the first half when they had the wind at their back. They should have been going out to rack up a lead, but that doesn't matter now. They're Connacht Champions. They were convincing in the end. And the fact that some people might point this morning to the fact that it wasn't like Roscommon were there until the very end, that they should have scored more, they missed a lot of opportunities, but that is a hallmark of this Galway team. The opposition is naturally going to miss a lot of opportunities once you fall into their trap, and it's a bit of both. It is a bit of Roscommon falling into the Galway trap in the second half and Galway just stepping up their game defensively, which was key.
Shane Walsh has made it to the point where his Wikipedia page was hacked this morning. Shane Walsh is a Gaelic footballer for the Galway Senior Football team. He also plays club football for Kilkerran, Clonberne, All-Ireland Tiddlywinks champion 2013 to 2018, and he's also age 71. And that's it. I mean, obviously a 6-year-old has got at this and gone, ooh, what's the worst thing that I can say about these guys? Oh, he's Tiddlywinks champion. It's like, yeah.
Nothing like a bit of Wikipedia hacking. It's the greatest compliment you can pay to any person.
8:10 this morning was the last edit, so obviously an early riser.
Just in the office early, a little bit bored. It's like, what am I going to do? Oh, that Wikipedia page.
Shane Walsh out here.
Yeah.
You have him down as an all-star, is he?
Well, after a performance like that in the Connacht final, like at the moment, if you're handing out the All-Stars, it's the best. It's going to be hard. We're going to be hard pressed to find a better performance in the provincial final.
Straight into your power rankings in your top 10.
That's a different story. I mean, that is different. I mean, power rankings is the top 10 footballers in the country. You see a top 10 footballer in the country, he's on the precipice for sure, and he's an absolute banker for an All-Star right now. But a big performance like Galway's next game is absolutely monumentally huge. It is the very thing the season will be defined on.
And yet you can lose it and still qualify for the semi-finals.
But you'll play Dublin, probably, if you lose that game. And you will have lost the game in Croke Park.
Do you have a better chance of beating Dublin in the semi or the final?
You probably do, but the thing is, you'll have just lost the game in Croke Park. You're Galway. You've been terrible. You haven't won a game in Croke Park in the championship since 2001. And you're going back to play the All-Ireland Champions.
They won one in the league last year.
In the championship, I said.
I know, but
and that was a crap game. It was
against this team.
This team, it's different, for sure. And that hoodoo doesn't matter. But I just think they have to beat Kerry. It was a much bigger game for Galway than it is for Kerry or Cork, whoever it is that they end up playing in Croke Park next month.
All right. A couple of comments coming through from stuff that we were covering a little bit earlier on, and I open up the right one. Seamus Bannon says, I don't understand the reaction to the Germany result. Look at the last 3 World Cup. The holders lost their opening games. The camp is having major off-the-field issues. Poor performances just before the World Cup. Don't be surprised when they don't qualify for the next round. I will be surprised. I think they're going to recover.
Yeah, the off-the-field stuff is a little bit worrying. It's not on the level of Spain in 2010 when they lose to Switzerland. Kind of a plucky sort of screw you kind of job when it came to Switzerland that time, when it was like we got done there a little bit, kind of got caught a little bit cold.
Mexico was really good.
Yeah, they were, but there was an element that gigantic elements of stupidity, really, with the way Germany approached that game yesterday. Not even stupidity, arrogance. Just pure arrogance is how they approached that game yesterday, which is a worrying trend. And it's worrying that the likes of Mesut Ozil and Ilkay Gundogan are kind of feeling in fear almost, or feeling really distraught, apparently. According to Didi Hamann yesterday on TV, just saying that those boys are not happy whatsoever with what's happened over the last couple of weeks. So it's worrying times for Germany.
You can't fix that, can you? You can't really get the fans back up. Well, I mean, they could play really well and the fans would stop booing them, and that would be one way of doing it. Or they could issue a statement. Somebody was saying they haven't issued a statement about the whole thing yet. I mean, who cares? Anyway, we'll do a bit more on that. We'll try and find out exactly why that's happened. Watching Iceland and Switzerland, even Peru making Denmark sweat, is a reality check for us. We're making a dog's dinner at international football level for some reason. The sad face.
Yeah, I think Iceland is probably the one that Ireland fans can look at with most envy. Just the way they managed to be very, very structured without being
boring.
Yeah,
They had a lot of chances.
They did, yeah. They
should have scored more.
Scored again, yeah. Obviously, Argentina should as well, but they just packed the middle area, not too different to the way Galway approach in Gaelic football. They just pack the middle area. They know that's where Messi's going to be hovering about. 2 men right in front of their own 6-yard box, and it was, or larger square rather, and it was a beautiful defensive performance.
To the rugby, and Neil Keegan says, in November, the pressure on the referee to give penalties against the All Blacks will suit us. It's turning against New Zealand. The issue here, though, is that, Neil, if there's a backlash this November, it'll have swung back again by the time the World Cup arrives in Japan. So what you want to do is somehow prevent this from happening into the future and saying, no, we've had enough of you. Somehow, all the referees are giving you all the big calls all the time. It happens too often for it to be a coincidence. We're all a bit freaked out by this.
Yeah.
Why is that happening?
It's a cultural shift, really, isn't it? Or to at least make people wake up and realise what's going on. Although, at the same time, we have been woke to this fact for a long time now. No, like Richie McCaw was the key component of this. But maybe that was just one player being kind of very shrewd on the ground and stuff like that, just like David Pocock is for Australia, and maybe it wasn't an overall view of the All Blacks.
Jack McGrath's little sneaky hand in the ruck.
Yeah.
And the face, the super slow-mo, it's like he's just got the guiltiest face of all time.
Well, exactly. I can't really add anything more to that. That's the guilty face.
OTB AM even, that's this show, which you're watching somewhere on YouTube or on Facebook or on Twitter. And I'm sure you subscribed to all three. We're also at Off The Ball AM on Twitter. The special Twitter feed just for this show is brought to you this morning with Screwfix, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products. That's pretty much all we've got time for on today's show. What have you got coming up on World Cup Daily?
We're going to be looking ahead to today's games on World Cup Daily. John Duggan will be back on the show with an in-depth, maybe analysis of Iceland today. We're going to be running you down through the winners and losers of the weekend. Many things happened over the course of the weekend. How we're going to break that down into 45 minutes of content, I'm not so sure. We've also got exclusive offers from Boyle Sports, offtheball.com/Boyle Sports to get a sneak peek at those offers.
So that's coming up at 12 o'clock today and every day during the course of the World Cup.
Half 12 today.
Half 12 today and every day at half 12 during the course of the World Cup. It's been a sensational start. And then tonight, Monday Night Rugby, looking back at the second test victory for Ireland, World Cup updates, and of course a whole feast of GAA action from last weekend, and a massive weekend of GAA action to look forward to as the qualifiers, the second last round of the qualifiers, will rattle into action next weekend. So we'll be talking about all of that as well on tomorrow's show, and talking about the Super 8s in a bit more detail. Until then, good luck.
OTB AM.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products.